Nyck De Vries, a Formula E World Champion, a Formula 2 Champion, points on debut in F1. Nyck achieved all this before getting onto the F1 grid full time, but then he only lasted 10 races. So what went wrong and where is he now? Welcome back to Chef 1 and this is the story of Nyck De Vries. Nyck was born on the 6th of February 1995 in Zuidwest Friesland in the Netherlands to a racing family. His father, Hendrik Jan De Vries, a former racing driver, competed in Formula 3 and the Deutsche Tourenwagen Masters, whilst Nyck's sister, Roos De Vries, is also a racing driver. Nyck himself said cars have always been a part of my family's DNA and that it stemmed from his grandfather, who used to own car dealerships. Despite a racing background, Nyck's family were by no means rich, and according to Nyck, his father sold everything to help him achieve his goals. Nyck began karting at a young age and in 2004 competed in his first major event, the Open Belgian Championship, where he finished 10th. 4 years later, Nyck won his first titles in karting, the German Karting Championship and the WSK KF3 category. He retained his titles the following year in 2009, as well as picking up a European KF3 title. These feats helped Nyck, as in 2010 he was signed to the McLaren Young Driver Programme, and then came his biggest feat in karting, back-to-back World Championships in both 2010 and 2011. All this success in karting naturally saw him progress to single-seaters in 2012, with a seat given to him in the Euro Cup Formula Renault 2.0. And in his first race, Nyck picked up a podium with a second place finish. Overall, it was a promising first season with a 5th place overall finish, beating all of his teammates in the process. 2012 also saw him occasionally take part in Formula Renault 2.0 NEC, where he managed a victory at his home circuit in Assen, as well as 4 podiums. 2013 saw another 5th place finish in the Euro Cup Formula Renault behind the likes of Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. Then in 2014, Nyck picked up his first single-seater titles as he won the Euro Cup ahead of Alex Albon and the Alpine Formula Renault Championships, winning 10 out of the 14 races. He followed this up in 2015 with an impressive 3rd place finish in Formula Renault 3.5, which included 5 podiums and a victory. All this saw him make the step up to GP3 in 2016 with ART, where his teammates included a certain Charles Leclerc and Alex Albon. Despite finishing 6th with 2 race wins and 5 podiums, he was beaten by both Leclerc and Albon as they finished 1st and 2nd respectively. Still, it was good enough to warrant a step up to F2 for 2017, where he raced for Rapax. Nyck once again impressed, finishing P7 in his rookie year, picking up 5 podiums and a race win, also finishing above Albon. However, these feats were sort of overshadowed by an incredible championship winning season for Charles Leclerc. So for the following year, Nyck once again competed in F2, this time for Prima, and he made a step up with 3 race wins. However, it happened to be the year in which Norris, Russell and Albon took part. All 3 finished ahead of him, which meant Nyck finished 4th in the championship. However, he wasn't far off Albon or Norris. At the same time as this, Nyck was also competing in the World Endurance Championship with LMP2 side Team Nederland. Nyck took part in 6 of the 8 rounds and his side won the 6 Hours of Fuji, the side's first win in that class. Anyway, Nyck returned to F2 for his 3rd year in 2019 with ART this time, and in 2019 he was finally able to conquer the championship. He picked up 4 race wins along with 12 podiums to finish 52 points clear of his nearest rival, Nicholas Latifi. Now, yes, you might hear Latifi in second and think it wasn't a strong grid, and yes, it wasn't as strong as the year before. However, 2019's grid did include likes of Zhou Guanyu, Mick Schumacher and Jack Aitken, to name a few, so it wasn't the weakest grid. So now, having won the feeder series for F1, you'd think Nyck would be in with a chance of an F1 seat. Nope. So without the offer of an F1 seat for 2020, Nyck was signed for the newly formed Mercedes Formula E team for the 2019/20 season, and this was alongside former F1 driver Stoffel Vandoorne. It was a relatively difficult opening season in Formula E for Nyck though, as Vandoorne finished 2nd in the championship whilst Nyck came home in 11th. However, there was promise shown in the season finale as Nyck picked up his first podium with a P2. The disappointing year obviously meant an F1 offer wasn't on the cards for 2021, however his ties to Mercedes were paying dividends, as he was able to test the Mercedes F1 car at the 2020 Young Drivers Test. He continued at Mercedes Formula E for the 2020/21 season, once again alongside Vandoorne, and the season started off with a bang. A pole position which was converted into his first victory in the series. Nyck then had a little wobble with a P9 and 2 DNFs, but he bounced back in Valencia for his 2nd victory of the season. Strangely enough, this was actually his last win of the season, as he then had a P16, a DNF, a P9, another DNF, a P13 and a P18. Not exactly title winning results, you'd say. But then in London, he finally found his feet again with 2 P2s, which meant he somehow, with all those results, went into the final 2 rounds of the season, leading the championship by 6 points. In the penultimate race, he came 22nd, but still led the championship by a large enough gap, which meant a P8 in the final race was enough to win the title. How he won the championship with those results, I have no idea, but it all comes down to no one being able to put together a consistent season. I'm not really sure you can say it was an impressive season despite the title, but I guess he did what he needed to do. So now on paper, he's a Formula 2 and Formula E champion. Surely an F1 seat is on offer. Nope. He continued in Formula E, however his ties to Mercedes meant he became a reserve driver for the F1 team and their customer teams, Aston Martin, Williams and McLaren. This led to him making his F1 practice debut at the 2022 Spanish Grand Prix in place of Alex Albon. He then had another session in France before another at Monza. Monza would be a bit different though, as on the Saturday morning, Albon pulled out with appendicitis and Nyck took his place in the Williams. This was his chance to prove he could do it in F1, albeit for a side place last in the Constructors. Nyck managed to get into Q2 in qualifying and qualified a decent 13th ahead of his teammate Latifi. However, there were plenty of penalties, meaning he'd actually start in the points in 8th. Nyck then drove a brilliant race to hold on to a points-paying position on debut as he finished 9th. Williams' best result of the season to date. This caught the eye of everyone around the paddock, and there were rumours of a Williams move or maybe Haas, but with Pierre Gasly leaving AlphaTauri for Alpine, a seat in the Red Bull family became available, and Nyck took it, as it was announced he would drive for AlphaTauri in 2023. Oh, and by the way, whilst all this was happening, he was still defending his Formula E crown, well, attempting to anyway. He came 10th in the championship. So now we move on to his Formula 1 career, and we all know how it ended. But how bad was it actually? So starting off, Bahrain was an okay start despite finishing 30 seconds behind his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, but he kept it clean to come home in 14th. Then came the difficult Saudi Arabia, which was actually much of the same with another P14 finish. Australia saw his first Q2 appearance and in the race was kind of unlucky as Sargent went into the back of him at the final restart, meaning he came home 15th. So far not terrible, about what you'd expect for a rookie, but then came Baku. Nyck went straight into the wall in qualifying. In sprint qualifying he came last. The sprint actually went okay as he made up some positions to finish 14th, and this meant there was some hope he could do the same in the race. Oh wait, he crashed again. So overall, his first terrible weekend, and there was already some pressure building. On to Miami, and actually a decent start as he made Q2 once again and beat Yuki for the first time in qualifying. So onto the race, he went straight into the back of Norris. And at this point, the pressure is starting to increase. But now it was time for Monaco, and a decent P12 in qualifying, his best yet. And in the race, the rain began to fall and many spun off, but Nyck kept it clean. So surely he brought home points, no? No, he didn't. He came home P12. Spain came around and another Q2 appearance and another dub over Yuki in qualifying. And the race wasn't actually too bad as he came home 14th, so a pretty solid weekend. Canada wasn't great though, with Nyck taking out Magnussen and finishing last of the finishers. Austria saw again another last place finish in qualifying, a P18 in the sprint and P17 in the race. Not great. And then Britain saw a P19 in qualifying and another last place race finish. And that was enough. After just 10 races, Nyck was replaced by Daniel Ricciardo for the rest of the season. So was he actually that bad then? I mean, obviously he wasn't great. You know, you look at the results, he clearly wasn't good enough. But was he bad enough to only be replaced after 10 races? I don't think so. He was in arguably the 9th best car on the grid, and yes, he was somewhat experienced, but he was still a rookie. I think people sort of forgot that. Of course, people look at Liam Lawson's standing performances as a comparison, and yes, he did better than Nyck, but the car was also better by that point. I think it was harsh, and I think he deserved more of a chance, but I can also see that maybe he wasn't going to be a good solution long term. But let me know your thoughts on it in the comments. So then we move on to what's next for Nyck. Well, soon after, it appeared as though he actually might leave motorsport for good, as it looked like he was going to go for Harvard to study, and I think everyone thought he was just going to start studying there. But no, it was actually just a week-long sort of rubbishy thing. And so Nyck finally returned to racing with Mahindra Racing in Formula E for the 23/24 season, and currently hasn't had a great start to the season, not finishing higher than 14th in the race so far. But he's also taking part in the World Endurance Championship this year with Toyota, and a 5th place finish in the opening round in Qatar shows some promise. So what does the future look like for Nyck? I think, unfortunately, his time in F1 is done for good unless he goes and wins, you know, Formula E by country mile. That doesn't look likely at the moment, but you never know. So I reckon he's going to continue in Formula E alongside obviously the World Endurance Championship. However, after that, I do think a move to somewhere like IndyCar could do him some good, and I reckon that's a possibility. Obviously, he has Prima ties, and Prima have just announced that they're going to be racing in IndyCar, so maybe that's an option. Who knows? Let us know what you think the future holds for Nyck in the comments down below. And that's about it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.